Good morning. I'd like to call our meeting to order, please. Take a look at the agenda. Is there any additions to our agenda today? Great. Can I get someone to approve, please?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So let's take a look at the council minutes of the meeting November 27th, 2018. Any discussion around the minutes? Wade?
I'll move the minutes adopted as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, 5.11. Good morning, Laurie. Thank you.
Good morning, Deputy Reeve and Council. I bring to you this morning an RFD on the Torrington Arena, requesting operating assistance for the remainder of 2018. A letter has been received from the Torrington Ag Society expressing concern over unexpected operating expenditures that have been incurred during their season startup this fall. Repairs to the ice plant, just over $5,000, and repairs to the Zamboni, around $7,200, were critical to continue operating for the 2018-2019 season. There is concern that as a result of these additional expenses, excuse me, they will not be able to cover their operating expenses over this next year and are asking Council for assistance. Discussion, there are expenses. These are expenses that the organization has already incurred in 2018. Should Council choose to provide assistance, funds are available in the 2018 operating budget through transfers to individuals and organizations. Our current balance in there is $67,500. Surplus funds are also available under the community grants to nonprofit organizations. However, the expenses incurred here do not align with the criteria for this policy. Cost and source of funding, Torrington Ag Society currently receives $17,500 in an annual operating grant from Kneehill County. Engagement is directive, linked to our strategic plan, fiscal sustainability, safe and viable communities. There is an attachment to this, and that is the letter that we received from the Torrington Ag Society. Recommended action is a council decision.
Thank you. Any discussion? Or a motion? Councillor Keever.
Has anybody ever seen their financial?
Through the chair, we have received their, I believe it's 2017, final operating expenditures and stuff, and they are very close to operating in a zero. Yeah, absolutely, just covering their expenses.
Councillor Keever.
Through the chair, the $17,500 is approved as of when council approves the operating budget. I believe it was in the first quarter that they received it this budget year.
Councillor King.
So I guess I understand that the reason we have this request is that they have encountered some unexpected expenses. The repairs to the ice plant, and even though we're going to be replacing that, it still has to be paid for. And the repairs to the Zamboni, both of which are fairly pivotal in terms of their operation. So in my mind, it seems like we're looking at a one-time unexpected expense that they encountered. These things are going to happen on a regular basis, but we have to deal with what's here. So my thought is that we could potentially assist them on a one-time basis for this unexpected expense. And maybe we could have some conversation around Councillor Keever's concern, which is, you know, long-term, are they billing enough for the use of the facility? Are they building some kind of reserve fund that they can cover unexpected expenses? I mean, things happen, and you have to plan for those things that happen. So in a case like this, I don't know, I feel it's appropriate that we help them. So I'm going to put a motion on the table here for us to discuss. I think that my motion would be is that we give one-time funding to the Torrington Ag Society to the tune of $12,265, which basically covers the cost of these two expenses. So motion would be that we give a one-time funding to the Torrington Ag Society for $12,265.
Thank you. Do you have a recommendation of where you want to see that funds to come out of?
I would say out of contingency. Sorry, just hang on a minute there, Carolyn. Laura, you said we had funds in two sources, and what was the first one, the 67.5?
Through the chair, that is funds that we have in the operating budget under the GL transfers to individuals and organizations. So that is at council's discretion, how they initiate disbursement of those funds. The current balance in there is $67,500. So there is definitely enough to cover the request.
Okay, so back through the Deputy Reeve, then I would say let's take it from the transfers to individuals and organizations fund.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, our motion is Councillor King moved that Council assist the Torrington Arena and provide them with a one-time funding of $12,265 with funds to come from transfer to individuals and organizations general ledger account. All who in favor? Oh, sorry, we have comment here from...
Yeah, just before we go there, I want to kind of, and I don't know how we do this, but is there a way also that we could work with this group to, as I understand Glenn's concern, Councillor Keever's concern, and maybe there's some coaching or some assistance we can help them with, and then I think we need a longer conversation around the Torrington Arena and long-term the operation of that. But I think that it's important as a council that we not only do this one-time funding, but we also think about how we can assist them in terms of managing that operation and maybe being prepared for some unforeseen expenses. And Councillor Keever has mentioned a number of times, maybe it's what does it cost to rent the facility, or what are they charging for ice time, and what are the other ways that they perhaps can make money. And maybe there's some coaching that can be done by Kneehill County to assist the Torrington Ag Society.
Reeve Woodstock, you. Nope, good. Any other conversation? Wait.
There we go. I guess my comment would be that we're looking at some major renovations in that facility. Then even they are prepared to look at more revenue from charging more once they're updated. So I think it's kind of in the works and it's coming, but we got to all work together to make it happen. So.
Any other comments? Okay, I will call a question. All in favor of the motion? Carried.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, on to 5.51. And do we have someone presenting? Yep, appointment to District Fire Chief. Sorry, Ms. Grossfield.
Good morning, Council. I bring to you today the appointment of the District Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief of the Torrington Fire Department. As per Bylaw 1712, Kneehill County Council must appoint the Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief for our District Fire Department, which is Torrington. Where Council establishes a fire department to provide fire protection in a fire district, Council will appoint the Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief in that fire department. The appointment will be reviewed every 2 years. The recommendation from the CAO for Fire Chief is Jason Mickelson, and for Deputy Fire Chief is Derek Benedict. Mickelson was in the Deputy Fire Chief role since March 2018, but has been acting in the Fire Chief role since August 20th, 2018. And Derek has been acting in the Deputy Fire Chief role since September 1st, 2018. This is a directive decision and they will be notified. They have been asked as well. And Council options are appoint Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief as recommended, appoint Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief as amended, and administration to research other options for Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief of Torrington Fire Hall.
Thank you. Comments? Mr. Kiefer.
I move that we appoint Jason Mickelson as Torrington Fire Chief and Derek Benedict as Torrington Deputy Fire Chief, and they will act until December 12th.
Any other comments? Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, we're up to our operating budget, item 6.1. Go ahead.
Good morning, Deputy Reeve McGee and all members of council. I've asked Mr. Wolf, Madam Chair, to sit beside me. He's been absolutely instrumental and done an amazing job putting this budget together, and he might be able to field a question if I may not be able to have that available information. So if that's okay with the chair, that would be
Thank you.
my
It'd
request.
be great.
Thank you.
To have you.
So this morning, item 6.1 is indeed the 2019 interim operating budget. Section 242 of the Municipal Government Act allows a municipality to adopt an interim operating budget. In the spring of 2009, when final budget numbers regarding assessment and education requisition become available, and at that time the tax rate bylaws can be considered and the final operating budget can be approved at that time. The interim draft budget was presented at the November 13th, 18 regular meeting of council and was presented balanced at that time. Council considered that draft and then scheduled a committee of the whole meeting held on December 4th to deliberate it, and then made the following recommendations that impacted the 2019 operating budget. And I will read them as verbatim through the notes of the meeting. And I'll also underneath it indicate the impacts of those changes. Number one, Councillor King made a recommendation to council to amend the policy 319, council per diem and salary, that councillors be paid on a base salary basis with the rates to reflect the following: $6,000 per month to the Reeve, $4,500 per month to the Deputy Reeve, $35 per month to all other councillors, and there be no meeting per diems. So the total impact and changes of that from the original budget that was presented was $54,490, which would require additional operating funds. Number two, Councillor King made a recommendation to council to add $1.3 million into gravel reserve into the 2019 draft budget, which means that's an increase to the line item transfer to gravel inventory projects, $1.3 million funded through operating dollars. Number 3, Councillor Whitstock made a recommendation to administration to bring back the master rates bylaw to the December 11, 2018 council meeting, indicating large volume water charges of $9 per cube to only bulk water users. So the net impact of that change under the line item of sale of goods and services was a reduction in net revenue of $212,943. Number 4, Councillor King made a recommendation to council to remove the enhanced RCMP / additional CPO from the 2019 budget. The impact of that change was a reduction in operating funds of $200,000. Number 5 and number 6 are related, and I'll explain in a minute. Reeve Whitstock made a recommendation to council to remove the 2 brush trucks at $200,000 each and 1 emergency trailer at $80,000 from the 2019 draft budget. And number 6, Councillor Penner made the recommendation to council to recommend option 1, $25,000 regarding the Keevers Lake Chalet from the original of $90,000. So the proposed capital being removed and revised means that $545,000 in total transfer of operating funds, that's tax dollars essentially, to fund these capital projects were reduced as a result. And that's why they're showing, and that's why they impact both budgets. That's why, because the funds come from the operating, but the actual capital are capital projects. So you'll see those again. There was a classification move for some of the branding expenses in building R&M, which are repairs and maintenance, from a non-TCA project to operating expenses as a result as well of the project approvals at the Committee of the Whole meeting on December 4th, 2018 of a total of $163,000, as well as reclassifying TCA expenses to non-TCA expenses for IT communication equipment of $50,000. So that all in all, the changes brought forth to council has a net total impact of a budget shortfall of approximately $822,433, which will be generated, anticipated through taxes when the final 2019 budget is presented in the spring, when the tax rate bylaws are also presented. And there's 3 in particular schedules on page 15, the operating budget summary comparison. So it's by object categories, I would suggest. So you have all your revenues, and then below all the total categories of types of expenses, contracted services, salaries, et cetera, and at the bottom you will notice that you will see that the net revenue over expenses is showing balanced. Page schedule 16, or rather on page 16, schedule interim operating budget percentage allocation. So the revenues look quite similar to the previous report. On the expenses side, you will see that they are by department essentially. And then pages 18 on is more detail in regards to the budget by department. So not going to go through those. So those schedules are very, by now this is I think the second or third draft that you've seen. And so the schedules should be relatively familiar to you in terms of what those look like. But again, there was the change with the changes of those impacts of the Committee of the Whole last week. So at this point, I will let council consider it, and the recommended action it would be to accept the interim operating budget as presented. But I will, through the chair, I will take feedback from council.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Well done. I think there's a few things that we wanted to discuss a bit here. I think especially how we are looking at amending the policy for our salary. So I'm open to hear if I'm the only one thinking that, or anyone else has anything to speak towards that. Reeve Woodstock.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. What I would like to see with that, I don't think we need to change the numbers right now, but what I would like to see with that is to take have administration come back with a report on what is happening within our zone as far as wage increases, and let's give it a little time and determine what it is that we're going to look at here, and bring it back. Let's say the first part of February, first meeting in February. Bring that report back, and then we'll have a better idea of what direction we're going to go.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Deputy Reeve, I guess the question I have, and I am in agreement with Reeve Whitstock that we need to do a little bit more research here. I've done a lot of number crunching and chasing this thing round and round, and I think there's probably two parts of this decision that we need to make, and to set it aside for a period of time, I'm perfectly good with that. I think as a council we need to decide whether we're going to go to a salary basis, and then secondly, or are we going to stay on a per meeting and a per diem kind of thing. Personally, I think that the salary route is the route to go, but I'd be very interested in getting the research that Jerry's talking about. I'm not sure whether we need to delay until February. I was wondering if we could have that information back by perhaps the first meeting in January. So that's January the 8th. I understand that the research needed to see what the other surrounding jurisdictions are doing is not overly complicated, and so perhaps it could be available to us. So other than maybe adjusting the timing that Reeve Whitstock is suggesting, I would be in favor of doing the same thing. We need to just do a little bit more research. I think we leave the budget number the way it is, and because it's an interim budget, we don't want to upset that apple cart any more than we have to, but we leave that where it is, and then we just come back to it perhaps the first meeting in January.
Mr. Hogan.
Madam Chair and the rest of council, I don't think there'd be any issue with doing research. I think the resources are available in-house, and I don't think it's particularly complicated. So I see no reason why administration couldn't have a report on the zone, the other 10, 11, or 12 municipalities in the zone for the January 8th meeting.
Okay, comments to this or anything else on the budget when it comes to changes that we made?
So Deputy Reeve again, so I guess a process question, and perhaps I should address this through you to Mr. Hogan. If we're going to do that, what happens with the recommendation that was made from Committee of the Whole? Do we have to make a motion to postpone that or set it aside, or what would be the procedural direction here?
Mr. Hogan.
Through the chair, Councillor King, as it was only a recommendation from Committee of the Whole to Council, Council can determine for themselves whether they take that recommendation or not. So there would be, as far as I'm concerned, there'd be nothing else. There would be nothing to send back to the Committee of the Whole. Council has decided to not accept or to delay that recommendation. So until the research is done, the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole technically would still stand until Council makes a final decision. So in terms of that, there would be nothing to do with the Committee of the Whole recommendation.
Thank you. So I'm ready for a motion or any more discussion.
I guess I'd have one more question, and that's going back to the transportation side. Just looking for some clarification on projects that are coming through reserve funds. So projects that will be done in 2019 that are being in part funded by reserves. Can I get some clarification there?
Mr. Morton, would you like to answer that, or do you want to delegate that somewhere?
Sorry, Councillor King, would you mind repeating the question again with respect to the project in particular?
Okay, I guess what I'm looking for is some clarity on, we're talking about making a contribution to reserves, and I'm just wondering if, rather than doing that, if we can shift some projects that are currently being funded by reserves into the operating side, and then we're not, you know, we're not taking from one hand and putting it in the other hand and then taking from that hand and putting it back. And so I'm just wondering, is there a way, and maybe Al, you could help out.
Mr. Hogan can answer that.
Through the chair, thank you, Madam Chair and members of council. On the in the capital, the proposed draft of the capital budget on page 33 of the package, under transportation, you'll see the road rebuild 24.4 and 24.5. Tendered late 2018, 4.6 million budget number. Funding source 2.698 million, coming from, I believe that's MSI, deferred and current MSI, with 1.9 million coming from, budgeted to come from reserves. So there is 1.9 million of that road reserve, or that road project 24.4/24.5 that is funded through reserves at 1.9 million. I believe, does that answer? I think that's the question you were asking.
Councillor King?
So just, Al, I was finding the page when you were running me through it. So just run me through it again, okay, please?
Page 33 on the interim project and capital budget under transportation. It's the third item, road rebuild 24.4, 24.5, tendered late in 2018 at $4.6 million budget amount. The funding source primarily is MSI, both deferred and current, at 2.698 million, and funding source for the remainder of the project is out of reserves at 1.9 million. The other possibility would be the bridge work to be done in 2019 is $1 million that is currently funded out of bridge reserves. So there are two major projects in 2019 that have funding out of our reserves: the 24.4 road and bridge.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the question I'm asking, and whether council wants to discuss this or not, but we are talking about putting 1.3 into reserves for gravel, and I'm just thinking, would it be more sense to use that 1.3 in one of these projects and just leave funds that are currently sitting in reserves sitting there? And so rather than basically take money out and put money back, I'm just wondering about that. And I see Mr. Whitstock has a comment.
R.V. Whitstock?
Yes, thank you. I think that would be, I think it'd be a good idea to take not to take the 1.9, but take 0.6 out of reserves to do the project, and take the 1.3 that to do this year's operating, or this year's road project. I think there's no point in switching things around. I think the money is being used this year to rebuild that road, and let's use that money to rebuild that road. I agree with Councillor King that pushing money around doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Let's use the money that we have, that we're generating. Let's use it to the project that we're doing this year, and the money stays in reserves, and that would probably be the way I would like to see it go.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion before we have a motion in regards to the budget?
So again, I guess I would just have a point of clarification. So now that 1.3 would go to the road rebuild on 24-4 and 24-5, and it would be funded through MSI operating, and then about 600,000 and change from reserves. So the net effect on the budget is exactly the same. Just we're not shifting reserves back and forth. That's so we're gonna that 1.3 would then be designated for the road rebuild on 24-4 and 24-5.
Mr. Hogan.
Madam Chair and Council, I think administration has a good idea where you're going. The issue in front of you is the operating budget, and we're into discussing capital budget. So I would say, if you want to do if it's still, the 1.3 million is budgeted out of the operating budget, regardless whether it goes to into a gravel reserve or goes into a road project. I would suggest that for council to deal with the operating budget, and then you can change whatever you'd like when you get to the capital budget. Because right now, all we're doing is, we're talking about how we fund a capital project, but we haven't decided whether that 1.3 million is actually going to be funded through the operating budget yet. I'm just trying to keep both the budgets so we don't end up with some confusion on which budget we're dealing with. So I think the question in front of council right now is to deal with the 1.3 million. Do you want to budget 1.3 million of the operating budget to a capital project or to reserves, and then deal with that when you get to the capital budget?
Thank you. So do you have any other points of discussion, or someone who's willing to make a motion in regards to the interim operating budget?
Deputy Reeve. I guess based on the information that's in front of us, and in light of Mr. Hogan's comments, we can sort out the details later. My motion would be that we accept the 2019 interim operating budget to reflect the monies being presented, with the understanding that we will have some conversation about how those are allocated. So, motion to accept the 2019 interim operating budget.
Okay. So we have a motion from Councillor King to accept the 2019 interim operating budget as presented. Any further discussion? Call the vote. All in favor? Carried.
There could be a motion directing administration.
So we are thinking maybe we need a motion for the direction of the understanding you were conversing about. Would you be interested in putting that into a motion? Anyone?
Madam Chair, members of council, in regards to the council remuneration portion, we would require a motion of council directing administration to do the research to bring it back for January the 8th. I would also suggest that potentially the motion could also include some verbiage to the fact that council will not receive the pay raise as approved in the interim operating budget until such time as that research has come back to council and council has an opportunity to revisit the issue. All you have done with the interim operating budget is approved that the money is there in case council wants to do that. But if we don't have a motion directing us to not, in theory, we would make the pay raise effective January the 1st, and I would suggest that that needs to be addressed in your motion as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Mr. Councilor Christie.
I'm reading the motion as it comes up here. And I think it's what we need. I'll move that we direct administration to bring back council at the January 8th, 2019 council meeting a council wage report within our zone. Council will not receive a pay raise until this research is brought back and a decision is made.
Any conversation? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Carried. Okay, on to the capital budget. Are we back with you, Mr. Martin?
We're ready. Thank you, Deputy Reeve McGee. Item 6.2 is the 2019 interim project and capital budget. Section 245 of the Municipal Government Act requires a municipality to pass the capital budget annually. The 2019 interim draft budget was presented at November 13th, 18 regular meeting of council and was balanced at that time. Council considered it and deliberated it at the December 4th Committee of the Whole meeting and made the following recommendations that impact the 2019 project capital budget. Reeve Whitstock made a recommendation to council to remove the 2 brush trucks at $200,000 each and 1 emergency trailer at $80,000 from the 2019 draft budget. Councilor made a recommendation to council to recommend option 1, which is $25,000 regarding the Keevers Lake Chalet. So there's a savings of $65,000. In summary, the capital capital projects were removed and reduced from the 2019 interim project capital budget, and funding for them removed from the 2019 interim operating budget, which is operating tax funded, which is why it was presented in the previous request for decision as well. So the net impact of $545,000 in reduced capital expenditures. There were also some operating non-TCA and TCA expenses that were reclassified from the first budget draft presented at the December 4th Committee of the Whole and flowed through the respective schedules and already mentioned in the 2019 interim operating budget request for decision. And the cost and source of funding are as per the budget schedules attached in some detail. There's the listing of the project as well as projects and how they're funded, as well as the capital replacement plan, the 20-year capital equipment plan. And so I'm not going to go through any detail in that particular schedule. And then, of course, we'll have to capture the change of the project, if you will, as a reserve transfer project of $1.3 million to gravel inventory reserve to reallocate to that particular road project as outlined on page 33. That will be reflected in this in the changes as per the motion that council's ready to make. So I'll leave that with council at this particular time.
Thank you. Councillor, excuse me, Reeve Whitstock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be prepared to have a motion that council accepts the 2019 interim project budget, capital budget, as amended with the changes with in the road project for $1.3 million to be placed towards that 24.4 or 24.5 road project.
Mr. Reeve, Chair and Council, it is 24.4/24.5 for that road project, yes.
Okay, so instead of coming from reserves to be coming from our budget, the 2019 budget.
Okay, so we have our motion. Reeve Whitstock moved to accept the 2019 capital budget with an amendment to designate $1.3 million to the 24-4, 24-5 road project instead of gravel reserve. Any more conversation around this? Any more comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Back to you, Mr. Morton, on our master rates.
Thank you again, Deputy Reeve McGee. Item 6.3 is the bylaw 1781 master rates. So at the December 4th Committee of the Whole meeting, Council directed administration to bring back the master rates bylaw at the regular council meeting to be held on December 11th today to remove the excess of water volume condition to regular water riser customers. Rates charged to bulk water users will remain the same as in bylaw 1777. So the December 4th Committee of the Whole recommendation was Councillor Whitstock made a recommendation to administration to bring back those master rates bylaw to this meeting, December 11, 2018. Council meeting indicating large volume charges of $9 per cube to only bulk water users. This change means that the risers or hookups to a county water line will only pay $3.50 or $2 for those two respective hamlets indicated below per cubic meters for whatever water volume is consumed. And the summary is of those particular changes are in the bylaw on pages 63 and 64. And the summary, the regular service connections and risers. So in summary, Huxley and Wimborne will be at the $2 per cubic meter for all volumes. All other water service area systems will be at $3.50 per cubic meter for all volumes consumed. The $50 per bi-monthly flat fee still applies to all current and future service connections. The bulk water stations, I just put it in below, as they will stay intact from the original bylaw, and the same tiering structure will be set up for 0 to 50 cubic meters monthly will be charged at $5 per cubic meter, and the $50 or 50 plus cubic meters monthly will be charged at, or in excess, will be charged at $9 per cubic meter. And the reduction, as we talked about when this change came into effect, it would be a reduction from the interim draft budget revenue, which has already been reflected as approved, will be the reduction of the $212,000 approximately net. And the bylaw of 1781 is for your information, and the recommended action would be for council to consider approving and giving all three readings to master rates bylaw 1781 as presented.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to make comments or questions for Mike? Councillor Keever.
I have a problem with the bulk water users still only paying $3.50 that cube. I made a couple of phone calls yesterday. On electricity, if you're a low user, you pay $70 a month. If you're a high user, you pay $261 a month. On natural gas, if you're a low user, you hook up at $3,600. If you're a high volume user, you pay anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000 to do that. Why do we want to give the bulk water user such a good deal?
Reeve Whitstock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of the bulk water users are actually using it strictly for their residential. They're hauling it into the cistern. And they're, yeah, $3.50 isn't a whole lot for water, but the transportation costs on that are. So I would rather see people that are needing water for their residential uses be able to pull water from the bulk water station at that $3.50 rate. What I'm thinking of, once you get over that 50 cubes per month, then it becomes possibly a resale sort of a situation, and that's, I think, where it should go to the $9 per cube. But I don't know, what would Councillor Keever's suggestion for bulk water rates be? Just a question, and if you want to answer that, Glenn, that would be great. But those are my thoughts.
Councillor Keever.
I think anybody over that 100 cube mark should be paying that $9 or whatever the number is there. But I think, Al, you had a number for the average residential house per month?
Mr. Hogan.
Through the chair, and thank you, Council. Yeah, typically a household will run around, for a family of 4, typical numbers are about 15 to 17, 18 cubes per month, in that 3,000 gallon, 3,200 gallon range per month for an average family. The other clarification just for Council, because I heard some numbers thrown out here, the bylaw that's in front of you has 0 to 50 cubes, bulk water cubes, 0 to 50 cubes at $5 per cube. I heard $3.50 per cube being floated here a minute ago, and anything over 50 cubes on a monthly basis is $9 per cube. That's the bylaw that's in front of you. I heard $3.50 a cube, so I just want some clarification from Council, because that was the bylaw amendment that we were directed to bring back. So I just want to make sure that that's so that's the bylaw that's in front of you.
Reeve Woodstock.
Sorry, I got the numbers wrong. I should have said 5, not 350. I apologize, because I know it was 5 in the bylaw. So I did misquote it. So
Thank you for that clarification. Other comments? Councillor King.
Okay, so I guess my understanding is that if you haul water from a bulk water station in Kneehill County, you're going to pay $5 a cube, whether you take 1 cube up to 50. The minute you go over the 50, you're going to pay $9 a cube. Now, is that $9 a cube back to the first cube, or is that $9 from 51 on?
Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. Through the chair here, that would be the 51 on, Councillor King. Yeah.
Okay, back through the chair again. I guess the question I would ask of Councillor Keever then is, at this point in time, if you're hauling water from a bulk water station, you're already paying a higher rate than somebody who's taking it from a riser at an individual residence or commercial business. So does that resolve the concern that you have regarding high water usage, or it doesn't really address that for you?
Councillor Keever.
Where the residential user is only at 17 cubes, the 50 cubes is giving them lots of leeway to water the garden, water the lawn, and this kind of stuff. And I don't really think anybody is going to haul water from a bulk water station to their yard if they already have a riser in there. So I'm saying that we've saved them the trip of hauling the water from the bulk station. So we put the water line in, he should be paying kind of the bulk water rate at his yard.
Any other comments? Councillor Keever.
At Committee of the Whole, Jerry was worried about, like, say, the Torrington Trailer Court, you know what I mean, going as bulk. There's a simple solution at the Torrington Trailer Court. Put a meter in every trailer instead of just flowing it through 1 meter.
Councillor King.
I guess the question I would have is that's a simple solution, but is it a more expensive solution than perhaps we're thinking about. I'm not sure what it would cost to put a meter in at every trailer in the Torrington trailer court. And then I guess the question would be, what is that cost and who picks up that cost if we were to go that route? Like, it's not just the Torrington trailer court that we're addressing as well, right? There's other facilities. We talked about some of the seniors' residences and some of those other places that are going to go over that 50 cube. There was some 100 and some, or I forget the exact number, of accounts that we have that are over that 50 cube. And they're not all Torrington trailer courts. Some of them are individual risers, farm operations. Some of them would be commercial operations. Some of them will be places like seniors' residences. So really it becomes one of those things where either you do it for everyone or you don't. And the way we, at Committee of the Whole, the way we decided we were going to split it was if it was an individual riser on a water line, it didn't apply. If it was at our bulk water stations, then it was easy to determine and then charge different rates. So I'm not sure, Glenn, how we resolve all of that. So I guess I'd be looking for some kind of, you know, for Torrington, trailer court, water meters per trailer, sure. But does that apply on all those situations that we're dealing with?
I agree that seniors lodges and this kind of stuff, you know, I mean, they're going to be hard to split out, but the individual water risers on farms, when they start going above the 50 mark, they're using it for a lot more than their house. And if they don't have a riser, then they're hauling from the bulk station. And they're going to pay the high rate. So they could probably pay the high rate right at their own farm and save themselves the trouble of hauling the water.
Councillor Christie.
Okay, Glenn, what if on the bulk water users, instead of going, it's at 350 now, instead of going to 9, what if we went to 5, over 100 cubes?
I don't really care what the number is above the 350, but it should be something more than the 350, so that they're aware of, you know, I mean, that the system was designed and put in for residences, not for the bulk water users.
Reeve Woodstock.
Well, I guess my comment to that would be the water was put in for the benefit of Kneehill County residents. We did limit the availability of water to 4 gallons a minute at 40 PSI max. I don't think there was ever an intent by council at that point in time to limit the amount of water. Well, they are limited to the amount of water they can pull out by that 4 gallon a minute riser. I don't believe that raising it to $5 and $9 at over 50, or $5 under 50 and $9 over 50 is prudent on our, well, I don't believe it's prudent for me to state that, okay, we've got water to you, now you're going to pay dearly for it. I think we always wanted that availability for water for whatever reason they were going to be used it for. Yes, it was designed to be a residential system, hence the 4 gallons a minute. But that being stated, I think we want to promote people using water. We want to promote people. We have the water, we can promote it, and that will bring county residents in, it'll bring business in. I mean, it's economic development. It's a number of things that we provided this water for. I mean, if we wanted just to provide water to residents, we could have hauled or bought a tanker and had everybody with a cistern, and we could have just hauled it that way. We went ahead and put it into it's not one of a kind in the province, but we did a really decent job of bringing water into our county residents, and I think it's been appreciated by a number of people. There are a few that did not see the need for it, and unfortunately they were caught up with having to pay for the benefit of all. But that is what government does, is we provide services for those so that it can be cheaper for everyone in the long run. And I mean, if I think $3.50 a cube right now for water at a riser, I think that's fine. I think $5 a cube for water at the reservoir, and if you're over 50 at $9, I think that's fine. But I don't want to see everybody sitting at $5 a cube coming out of a riser or the bulk fill, and then $9 at over 50. That defeats the purpose of trying to provide a service for our residents as a whole.
Okay, I need to readdress this in that I'd rather have the point of order go in the correct form. So if we could have a motion so that we can carry on further discussion, because technically discussion needs to follow a motion. Does anyone want to please address that?
Okay, if Jerry's hand's up there, go ahead, Jerry.
Well, I would move the council give first reading to bylaw 1781, and that being a bylaw to establish rates, fees, and charges for various goods, licenses, permits, and services.
Thank you. Discussion. Mr. King.
I think that we can go around and around this for quite a while today, if we so choose. I'd like to make the suggestion that perhaps we go forward with the bylaw that we're currently looking at, and that we commit to doing further research in terms of what's the actual cost of the maintenance of the system. We know pretty much what the water costs us, but if we're going to have a long-term conversation about greater compensation and return to the investment we have in the water system and moving people towards cost recovery and water, et cetera, that's a pretty long discussion. And I mean, we can go back and forth all day here if we want. My suggestion would be is maybe we request from administration more information, and I'm prepared to make that motion after we're done with this bylaw, but that we request more information on the water system, and that we come back as a council either in a COW meeting or some other forum where we talk about water and the long-term picture for water. How are we going to move from where we are today to what percentage of cost recovery? 100%, 50%, 75? I mean, we can go around and around that as well. Do we want to recover what our actual costs of just the water are, or we want to recover our costs of water plus the cost of maintenance? What is the cost of maintenance compared to cost of water? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things we don't know. And we have good people who are working for us who can provide us with that information. So my proposal is we go ahead with the master rates bylaw and the motion that Reeve Whitstock has made, and then we take greater consideration of water in general and where we want to go with it. Just a comment on that.
Thank you. Councillor Hugo, do you have anything you'd like to add?
We're in a catch-22 situation. I agree with Glenn. We do have to look at somehow or another to recoup a little bit of the cost from a bulk water user, but to determine which one we're going to be, who's going to be a bulk water user and who's just going to be residential, it's a very difficult one. Hopefully, I think more information back on our costs and everything, like Councillor King has mentioned, would be our best way to go in the future.
Councillor Christie.
I know that we've chased this round and round, and without, I still struggle with the actual costs and the bulk water users versus the residential water users. So I think it definitely needs more discussion. I think we need to proceed the way we are today, but bring it back to the table for sure.
Councillor Keever, any further comments? No. Okay, I will call for a decision on our motion. Let me just read it here. Reeve Whitstock moves that council give first reading to bylaw 1781, that being a bylaw to establish rates, fees, and charges for various goods, licenses, permits, and services. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Deputy Reeve, I would move that council gives second reading to bylaw 1781.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for motion on second reading to bylaw 1781. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Councillor, excuse me, Reeve Woodstock.
Consideration to hold third.
We have a motion to consider holding third. All in favor? Opposed?
It's defeated. Carolyn is defeated.
No?
Unanimous is required.
Unanimous is required to go on to third reading, but it's not, it's, we can bring that back to the next council meeting for a third reading.
Yeah, no, the bylaw. Through the chair and council, the bylaw is not defeated, it's just the consideration to hold third. The bylaw will have to come back to a future council meeting.
Okay, we'll just finish this, be sure this is understood. So, Mr. Hogan, is that reading correctly then?
Madam Chair and the rest of council, yes, the motion itself, in terms of the number of people required to carry a motion, is correct. However, unanimous is required for consideration of third. So currently you cannot carry on to third reading today because consideration to do third reading was not carried unanimously. So it is correct in terms of the way it's indicated on the screen. However, to move forward, it has to be a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Having said that, we are going to take a 15-minute break. So we'll see you all back at 9:45. So just to be sure we're understanding where we have stood so far, we need a unanimous vote to carry third reading, which we did not receive. As such, then, without having a third reading, we will have to go back to our water rates as was passed at the last time. So we need to be consciously aware of the fact that now the rate is $9 per cubic meter across the board.
Just on the 50 cubes plus, right?
Over 100 cubes. Yeah.
100 cubes by month, so it's 50 cubes per month.
Councilor Christie.
The rates where it's blocked out is 100 cubes bi-monthly, so it'd be 50 cubes per month.
Mr. Hogan.
Madam Chair and rest of the council, you can see on the master rates bylaw that was provided to you the crossed out numbers. So, for example, the Granger Hesketh would have been $3.50 per cube, and anything over 100 cubes would have been $9 per cube. So that is that's back to where we're back to where we are now. And as well, Madam Chair and rest of the council, administration is just looking for some direction as to when council would like to see the master rates bylaw come back for third reading.
So if we could have a motion to clarify that, please. Reeve Woodstock.
I would move that we bring the master rates bylaw back at the next regular council meeting in January. We believe it's January 8th. Bring it back for third reading.
Okay, so we have a motion. Reeve Woodstock moved to bring back the bylaw 1781 for third reading to the January 8th, 2019 council meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Carried. Okay, bank reconciliation. I believe that's back to you again, Mr. Morton.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve McGee. Bank reconciliation July to September 2018, and to request council's acceptance of the July to September 2018 bank reconciliation. As noted, the bank reconciliation has been completed for the periods indicated. As of September 30th, 2018, there is a total of $10 million invested into one GIC, and that's indicated on the report. It also matures in October, so it's already been renewed. And the recommended action is to accept the July to September bank reconciliations as information.
Okay, before we have discussion, could we have a motion, please? Reeve Woodstock.
I move the council receive for information the July to September 2018 bank rec safe report. Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Morton, our quarterly financial report.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve McGee. Item 6.5 is the third quarter financial summary. The request is to accept the January to September 2018 financial reports. And I'm just going to read verbatim as the report indicates. The request for decision includes 4 financial reports. The operating report, which you find starting on page 72, the project report on page 87, the grants is a 1-page summary on page 100, and reserve schedule on page 101. The budget amendments approved by council after the initial budget are recorded in the report. So there was a few special motions that were made that had budget amendments that would be included in it from the passing of the May budget. Budget transfers to reserves have been completed for the year to date as indicated. So anything that was budgeted transfers would have been shown up in that report as well. The non-tangible capital assets and tangible capital assets projects have been funded as per the 2018 budget. So again, any funding for those particular projects will have showed up as revenue in those respective schedules. The report cut off for actual expenses was September 30th, 2018. Invoices and work orders received late, so sometimes those things trickle in a little bit late past cutoff. Will be included in the next financial quarterly report. Overall, the operating revenue, and this is shown on page 76 in summary, is at 103.74% of budget. So we're past the 100%. We've got extra revenue than we anticipated budgeting is what that means. And expenses are on page 86 and shown at 70.63%. And because it's third quarter, we typically want to be around 75. So we're slightly under. That's a pretty good number as of September 30th, 2018. The operating report shows some expense variances as of September 30th. Primarily, that difference at roughly 5% variance is due to some of the seasonal work being completed later in the year, in particular in the transportation, parks, and ag services department, where there's more seasonal wages and seasonal materials and so forth that skew the linear number from the seasonal portion of the year. The following revenues to date are of note and are exceeding budget. So well drilling by $328,000, interest earned by $340,000, transportation other revenue by $198,000, and planning department licenses and permits by $112,000, and those are shown on in positive variances on pages 72 and 75. Revenue from penalties on taxes outstanding is also above budget by about $346,000. This is is of course concern, but this is primarily due to non-residential taxes in arrears. So again, because we're incurring additional penalties and interest, it also means that people aren't paying some of our considerable industrial accounts as noted in previous council meetings. Page 1 in the project report shows a net gravel expense of $2,053,260. Which accounts for the gravel use. So that's as of September 30th, that's how much gravel we've applied to the roads, and budgeted gravel purchases are reported on contract purchases line on page 87, and it's around $1.8 million. And so those are the high level summaries. You can probably decipher a bit more detail. I'm not going to go into the extra detail. I indicated simply for council the high level overview for your information, and the recommendation would be to accept the January to September 2018 financial reports as presented.
Thank you. So if we could have a motion to start our conversation. Councillor King?
I'd move that council receives the January to September 2018 financial reports as presented.
Would anyone like to make any comments or questions? Councillor King.
I just have a question. Mike, in point 8 there, we talk about revenues from penalties on taxes outstanding. My assumption is because they're not paying their taxes, they're not paying their penalties either, right? So that's revenue that's potentially on the books but not necessarily received, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's absolutely correct, Councillor King. That's exactly the interpretation.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll call vote. Councillor King, Move to receive the January to September 2018 financial reports as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All righty. And Mr. Morton, you are the star of the day.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve McGee. This will be it, I promise. Item 6.6 is the 2018 Project and Capital Budget Report. Council passed the capital project budget last December 2017 with some amendments. Council's role in governance is to ensure the stewardship of its entrusted resources. Presentation of the 2018 Project and Capital Budget Variance Report is based on data that's been available to the preparer as of November 30th, 2018. So it's pretty up to date, this particular report, unlike the previous quarterly report, which is more of an audited sort of review. The gravel acquisition projects are $1.7 million approximately, and I'm just going to approximate everything here. 167,000 of which was a transfer to gravel reserve, and the actual money spent on projects is around 1.5 million. On non-tangible capital asset projects, approximately $1.34 million has been spent to date. Contract shoulder pull constitutes about 1.1 million of that. The tourism master plan, 83,000 of it, and the Wimborne reclamation project has been kick-started and has spent about $58,000 to date. On page 105, the tangible capital asset project, so far we've spent approximately $4.4 million in budgeted transfers and expenses and transfers to reserves, 1.5 of which are transfers to reserves. Range Road 25-1 rebuild, we spent 1.6 million on. Linden West project, $534,000, and Huxley Microsurface, $267,000. Horseshoe Canyon development, approximately $126,000, and various couple bridge projects, $108,000. So those are the bulk of that $4.4 million that has been spent on tangible capital assets to date. Capital equipment plan, new to the plan, so that's operating funded new items. 95,000 has been spent to date, and that's complete. Capital equipment plan, existing plan, so that's part of our 20-year plan rolling stock. $1.36 million was spent to date. There is one item outstanding. We're still, we may look at that for next year at this point, and that's on page 106. Water service area and capital equipment plan contributions, page 107, and capital sales. Water service area and capital equipment plan contributions, total of 3.311 million, has been transferred to reserve per the budget process. And capital sales we have received in our trade-ins, values, and sales of old fleet. $468,000 has been received. And so that will completes the total capital expenses and sales. The total of $12.2 million on a budget of $26.7 million. And the council action would be to receive the project report to November 30th, 2018 for information.
Thank you. So we are looking for a motion to start our conversation. Councillor Christie.
I'll move that we approve the capital and project expenditure report.
Any discussion or comments? Okay, I'll call for vote on our motion. Councillor Christie moved to approve the capital project expenditure report as of November 30th, 2018. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just for notes for people who are following the agenda, we were to have a presentation at 10 o'clock by Sergeant Gabe Graham. We got called during our meeting to say that he is no longer able to attend, so that is now off of the agenda for today. So we will move on to new business, 8.1, Kneehill Historical Society.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of council. 8.1 is regarding Kneehill Historical Society letter of support. A request was made by the Kneehill Historical Society asking for a letter of support as they're prepared to apply for an Alberta Tourism and Culture grant to help fund an accessible ramp to the Kneehill Historical Society newly restored renovated building. The grant application must be in the mail prior to December 15th, 2018. The link to the strategic plan would be viable communities and thinking and acting regionally. The attachments, you can see the Kneehill Historical Society request letter. It's attached to the package, and the recommended action is that council provide a letter of support. Council options are the council provides a letter of support to the Kneehill Historical Society, or the council receives for information.
Thank you, Al. Could we have a motion to start our discussion? Councillor Hugo?
I move that council provides a letter of support to the Kneehill Historical Society in applying for an Alberta Tourism and Culture grant to help fund a universally accessible ramp.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Reeve Woodstock.
I guess it's just a comment. After going through the letter and stuff, there is no request for financial contribution to this. So I just wanted to ensure that that was correct.
Is that correct, Mr. Hogan?
Madam Chair and rest of the council, my understanding from reading the letter is they are, as of today, not asking for any funding.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I will call for a vote on the motion made by Councillor Hugo, move to provide a letter of support to the Kneehill Historical Society in applying for an Alberta Tourism and Culture grant to help fund a universally accessible ramp. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Do we have a closed session? All right, then. I need to say, I think we have ran through our agenda in record time here. Thanks to everyone who presented. Comment from Reeve Woodstock, please.
I think we still have council action items, and if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong.
Thank you, Reeve. Moving too quick. So we will look through our items, please. Council action items. Questions or concerns regarding Mr. Hogan?
Madam Chair, Reeve Woodstock and the rest of council, while you're looking at the council follow-up action items, this is my last time sitting with this council. My last day of employment with Kneehill County is on the 14th of the month, just at the end of the week. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. It's been my pleasure to serve this council. It's been my pleasure to serve the previous council and the ratepayers of Kneehill County. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I wish you all the best, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and all the best in 2019.
Same to you, Al.
Yes, we all are very appreciative of all the work you have done, and it'll be a very different way of coming around this table without you beside us. We will be missing you for sure. Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Any comments on the action list?
I guess just as a clarification, so there's a number of items there, the Prairie Christian Academy, the letters to the councils, and Bylaw 1755. Those should be all three of those potentially completed at this point in time?
Madam Chair and rest of council, yes, the 406-18, at the next time you see the list will show completed. The funding to Prairie Academy, that will show completed. And I'm just... yes, and 17118 will show closed next time as well.
Any other questions?
I'd make the motion to receive December 11th council follow-up action list as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to receive the council follow-up action list as presented for information. All of those in favor? Carried. Let me check my agenda to be sure I don't misspeak again. Motion for a closed session?
Just a backup question. Where are we at with the Wimborne reclamation? Have we started?
Through the chair, I don't believe we've actually, other than the testing wells, I think that are in place, I think that's all we're doing right now is just testing, trying to figure out exactly where the contaminant and the hazard has leached towards and is working towards. So my guess is at this point, there probably won't be any actual reclamation done now till spring.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, I call the meeting adjourned.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to council for allowing me to attend the meeting because you'll be going into, or is there a closed session?
No closed session today. It's a happy day.
Okay, great. So we are adjourned. So thank you again.